Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Tellman and Fellman Show. My name's Harris Fellman, and that gentleman over there is muted. He's muted.
Okay, I think
Ladies
I'm
and
unmuted
gentlemen,
now. What the heck?
my name is
The
still
mute.
Harris Fellman, and who's that?
I'm Tellman Knutson, unmuted, and you're here for another live episode of the Tellman and Fellman Show, episode 66, with HeatherClaus, aka Nookie. This should be an interesting episode.
Yes, you are in for another extraordinary episode of the Tellman and Fellman Show, and we have the second woman only on the show. What does that say about us?
What does it?
Welcome, HeatherClaus, aka Nookie. I have looked up the word Nookie just to be sure, and according to ChatGPT, it's a slang term that refers to sexual activity or intercourse. It's often used in a playful or an informal context. The term is generally lighthearted, but it can also be used in a somewhat crude or casual way. So, just wanted to make sure that I didn't miss anything. I was concerned that I may have, because that happens to me sometimes. She is an entrepreneur, a lover of life, a partner in the to the most amazing man that she's ever known. Amazing, he must be, and an avid reader, a hiker, a cancer previvor, a traveler, a cook, and more. She also has ADHD, much like Tellman, and she's an author. I'm sorry, that wasn't in the intro. And she's an author, an educator, and you're been there, survived that, cut through the bullshit. Well, it does say BS, but we can say shit. It's our show. Relationship coach. It's time for episode 66. Is it 66? Of the Tellman and Fellman Show. Please welcome HeatherClaus. Yay.
You mean I missed the opportunity to be on episode 69?
You did.
Yeah, I know.
I'm seriously disappointed here.
That to Tellman because that's going to be for a special person, I guess, and I don't know any more special than you that it could possibly be. So, and yet I know nothing about you other than you've decided that your nickname is Nookie. So, let's go.
Well, we also know that Heather is a very avid and engaged fan of Colin Terrio and the Cult of Copy. Because she was nominated by Colin just the other day to be on the show, and here she is.
That's right. So does that mean that you are also a cult leader of your own?
I've been called such in the past, even before I met Colin. So
would it be a Nookie cult?
Yes, sort of. I mean, in my far past, not so much, but in recent years, absolutely.
All right. Well, polyamory is very popular here in Europe, so we can talk about that. Although I'm sorry, I'm projecting. Anyway, why don't we start with your origin story? How did you land in the world of internet marketing and copy and all of that?
So back in 1996, I wrote a book. And I decided I wanted to put it online, this internet thing. I'd been online for about 2 years at that point. And I decided to create a website. And so my first website was a GIF, like this long, because I wanted it to look exactly so. And I knew enough HTML to put one image on my site. It took forever to load, but
this was in 96. You had a website.
An animated GIF.
It was not animated at the time.
Oh,
we just had the straight GIFs at the time. Like this was
okay.
Way back, that, that.
Yeah. 128.
And I was teaching. I started off with that book, which was a resource to mail order supplies for sewing and fiber arts.
Okay.
And I later that year in 1996, I started teaching a class. As far as anyone knows, it's the first sewing class anybody's taught over the internet. I used brand new technology, PDF files, and listservs. Remember listservs where you chatted?
People had to download the Acrobat Reader just to use your PDF.
And they did.
Right.
They did.
Right.
And, I was talking with Tellman the other day and I'm like, do you remember internetmarketing.com with Corey Rudel? Like
that was actually before my time. Like I didn't know Corey, but like Corey passed just as I was entering the scene. Right?
So yeah, I
It was
actually
probably a couple years, one year maybe at max. Like I think like I'm a little bit behind you, but I think he had been like I wasn't on that site, but I knew it was a big deal when he passed.
Yeah. I was actually at a couple of their events and sort of trotted up on stage as like, look what she's doing at a young age. I was young then, like I was a baby.
And female, which is even rarer at a marketing conference.
You can't make that assumption, Tellman. You can't assume that someone has always been a female anymore. You're just jumping right to that.
Dude, I live in Brattleboro, Vermont. I'm very, very aware.
I am a cis woman. My pronouns are she, her. Absolutely. Okay. And so for about a little over a decade, I taught sewing and fashion design and personal style classes online and off. And I grew my market to about 57 countries, 35,000 students.
Paying students?
Yeah. And so that was like where I began.
How much were you charging for stuff back then?
It depended. So what I was doing is I would write the lessons and then sort of start them on a rolling basis, and people would join each time I started, and then they could rejoin every time I started once they paid once. So some of them were, $50, some of them were $100, some of them were $150.
And they were all PDF sewing courses.
Yeah.
You were selling PDF sewing courses.
Yep. I ended up creating over 15,000 pages of content.
Holy smokes. That's incredible.
With
that's
photos,
really cool. Yeah. That's a really cool story.
What was that, Fellman?
With photos to show how to do.
Well, no, not even photos. I illustrated.
Okay.
Because when it comes
to or did you illustrate it on like MS Paint or something?
I used a Wacom tablet.
Mm-hmm. A tablet. So she basically like this. She had a pen and bigger than this probably.
Cool.
But,
because with sewing, it was really hard to get good, crisp images. Again, technology at that time of stitches, like doing the right thing and, so on and so forth. It was easier to illustrate them.
So you're
I kind of remember seeing some like patterns and stuff like that where it was very like if it was a picture, it was, I don't know, I just kind of remember like it was represented. It wasn't actually like the actual stitch or whatever. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, this is cool. It seems like you're a creator. Like it seems like you create things both in the physical world, but then you're also like a computer nerd and learn coding and website stuff at an early age. So it's an interesting crossover.
Again, we're all creators. We're all creators, Tellman.
We are not all creators. Some people are creators. Some people definitely are not. They just choose.
I know we are. Yes, they are. They're just creating something that's not good for them.
Well, I don't know. Maybe there are people who are more creators, and there are people who are more consumers. I feel.
Yeah, I think people have become consumers, but they have I think that humans. Anyway, whatever. Let's get spiritual. Anyway, so do you still sew at all? Do you still? Is that still a hobby of yours, sewing?
I do. I do. I sew and I design. It is definitely a hobby at this point. Although I have toyed with the idea of like tidying up, that information that I have and just putting it out there again, because like there's so much of it, and so much of it is very different. My brain thinks differently than a lot of people, and it's very different from how people are usually taught. So that's one of the things that made it so successful when I was doing it.
Very cool. So that's like 96 to 2000 or how
96 to about 2007, 2008.
Cool. That was a long run then.
Yeah. When my husband and I split up, I was in an abusive marriage. And when my husband and I split up, I dropped that like a hot potato because I didn't want him to receive benefits from it.
Right.
And that's pretty much what happened. Plus my mental health, I needed to heal. I needed to, find something else that didn't have, like that memory of him in it, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, do something different.
Yeah. So I went on to working with small businesses. I had some residuals coming in from licensing that I'd been doing and stuff like that. So I was able to then volunteer for local small businesses and help them update their websites. And that's kind of when I got into like coding and apps and, like helping people like in real time market who they were locally and organizations and that sort of thing.
So did you during 2007, 2008, that's Tellman and I started around 2005, 2006, and then there was a lot of internet.
2003. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay. Well, then Corey Rudel was definitely alive for a couple of years.
Well, I just didn't. I guess I didn't buy it.
For me, I had a network marketing, an email marketing company, and I mostly sold porn sites to perverts or normal people, whatever. Yeah, you were on my list. And I don't know, there's a very big list. I did that before I got in what I consider 2005, where I really got into the internet marketing side of it. I was an internet marketer. I had websites and did internet marketing. I just wasn't in the niche. Anyway, my question was going to be, did you go to any events? Did you go to any of the in-person events at the time?
Oh, yeah. So when my husband and I split up, I spent about a year sort of like cocooned, like thinking, okay, how do I not let that happen again? Yeah. Right. And that is when I really dug into online. That's when I visited all the chat boards. That's when I joined, the pickup artist community. As Nookie. And then several months later, I also joined it with a masculine account, so I could kind of see both sides.
What was Eben Pagan's name in that world?
Oh, good question.
You remember?
David D'Angelo.
David D'Angelo.
Yeah. David D'Angelo. Yeah. So I ended up going to some of their events, and like being, again, the woman. Yeah. Trotted out onto stage. I was telling Tellman, that's where I met a hypnotist that I ended up learning some hypnotism from, more fun hypnotism, because I was willing to go up on stage and be hypnotized in front of this
someone had a reaction to that. All hypnotism is fun, lady.
Well, for play, right? Yeah. Versus
stage hypnosis.
Yeah, stage and entertainment and comedy hypnosis versus hypnotherapy. I mean, it's really the same stuff either way, but it's just a difference of how you use it and how you apply it.
Exactly. And so, I learned a lot. Plus, I bought every PDF I could find online at that time for several years about relationships, about whatever. I went to Barnes and Noble. I bought all the books. Like I was going to download as much data into my brain about how to do this as I could so that my next relationship wouldn't harm me.
So I'm making some assumptions and I don't want to
allow you to be harmed.
Yeah. I'm curious about why, because it's an unusual move, is why you joined the pickup community as why did you decide to go to check that out and then to dive deep into it at all? Like why, I can think about why I might do that in your shoes, but why did you do that?
Psychology. Studying the opposition, what were people learning at that point? And some of these guys had their heart in the right place, right? Like I can think of David Shade. Like he was teaching people like some of this, how to, get in touch with your masculinity and, how to really build like real passionate relationships. Not just sort of hit it and quit it or trick them into bed type stuff or whatever. And I found all of it fascinating.
Did you also feel tricked by your husband in retrospect? Do you feel that he didn't present as the person that he was?
No, he had a mental illness that was undiagnosed, and that led to alcoholism. At the time I was mad, I was sad, I was frustrated, but I also couldn't really blame him.
Mhm.
It was his fault in a lot of ways, but he didn't know, right? Like that wasn't something I could do. He didn't.
Well, but even if he did, like my mom's mad at my stepfather because she's like, he must have known and was bearing it. Like he had some mental illness as well. And I'm like, maybe, but of course, like if like you're just trying to live your life, and unfortunately, like, my mom was in more than one abusive relationship with my dad, with my stepdad. So I'm privy to it,
Yeah.
and at the same time, you have to ultimately you have to empower yourself and not be a victim. And yeah, so that's cool. So what did you get from the pickup artist community?
I learned a lot about how people talk
Hmm.
about people. Like when I wasn't there, when my masculine counterpart was there,
All right,
how
when you
people
stepped in
talked
with
about
your own
me.
alter ego.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a cool move because there are all these
Ooh.
guys who used fake names. So you just came up with your own fake name and switched your sex and then walked in the door to like
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
Okay, so what did you learn? Yeah.
I learned about testing, right? The types of tests they'll say, test a woman to see if she's, looking for a relationship. And if she is, try this to see if she'll settle for a one night stand, right? Like
Mhm.
learning like the hypnotism language, the NLP, what do when we speak, what do our words tell people who are paying attention? Right. And I think more than anything, like after a year, after a year of like really going into this, I then started dating. And that next year, I had 127 first dates
Mm.
in that year. And I learned a lot about what I didn't want from a partner. And more importantly, I learned a lot about what people write online and how they actually show up. And I learned to read between the psychological lines of how people spoke when they were talking about relationships, either online or off.
Mm-hmm. Crow. Wow.
Cool.
127.
127. Yeah.
Oh, no, thank you. Whew.
I made a point then. And of course, remember, this was like, the late 2000, aughts. Dating was huge online. And I said to myself, anyone who asks me out, who has not actively creeped me out,
Mhm.
I'll go out with, see if there's
Mm.
a connection, see if there's something there.
Yeah.
And so I did.
You couldn't possibly do that right now on Tinder. You'd have so many people. Like I have this girl that I went out with, like I was like, I go through spurts where like I'm a player for a week. So like, I was on Tinder and this
I know the
girl
feeling.
somehow I ended up going out with her. But like I saw her Tinder and she's like an influencer. Like I mean, it's like an amazing number of people that like are like connecting or matching, I guess is what they call it.
Mhm.
And then hey, what's up, girl, or whatever. And she doesn't even have she didn't even have a process. She's just like, whatever on top, I guess I'll try to talk to. It was just insane. Yeah.
I think there's a lot to be learned from that though,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, and the challenge is these days is people have the pickup artist community has dissolved to a certain extent, but it has become other things. It has led to the incel community. It has led to the men's rights
Hold
community.
on.
It has
What's incel?
And
involuntarily
so no,
celibate.
Oh,
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
a whole movement, and some of it is very harmful
And
and
no wanking either,
denigrating.
right?
What's up?
No wanking either, right? Sorry, I'm in
Well,
the UK.
different
Right. Yeah,
bits, different like, but it's led and it's also seeped out into a lot of your just regular relationship guru stuff. People are using these same common tropes of the war of the sexes to
Mhm.
push forward ways of being with people that boxes people in and puts them into like crappy relationship patterns over and over and over again. It's awful.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Wow, way to
So
sell it.
Yeah. So you were at most of these pickup artist conventions or conferences, that it was about marketing and selling the product as well, right? It wasn't, or was it more about the art
No,
of the
that
game?
was about like bringing all the guys together and teaching them like how to get chicks into bed.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
Yeah,
Right.
the
So
marketing and stuff.
So they all meet in Austin and they go to 6th Street and try their stuff out?
I mean, yeah, and Las
Oh.
Vegas.
Right.
Okay, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
I was married during those years, so it didn't even
Yeah,
register.
right. Yeah, like that whole world I have had very little crossover with. Like I have a couple of friends in the business who've played in that space, but yeah, very very little exposure. Like personally, I've had very little exposure to it. So okay, so you learned all this stuff from the.
You'd be a natural, Tellman, I'm sure.
Well, I've got other things to do. Honestly,
He has no language patterns. Absolutely. Like he could pick it up in no time flat, right?
Yeah,
because he's already got the mental training for it.
Well, but also the other side of it. I mean, he's dating somebody now, and he's probably had a couple of smaller relationships before that. So he doesn't have a problem with that necessarily either. So I mean, that's part of it, right? Is guys that
then he wouldn't be great for that because he doesn't have a problem.
Right. Exactly.
That's the key, right? Like,
well, I have plenty of problems. Let's be clear. Like,
but connecting with the ladies isn't one of them. That's all we're saying. Yeah.
No, yeah, it's funny. Relationships are funny, right? I definitely find that I feel better and more comfortable if I'm in a long-term relationship, and I feel a little antsy and like frantic and weird about myself when I'm not, and I'm trying to get more comfortable. I mean, I've been dating a woman for the last almost 2 years now, which is great. But at the same time, I was in a 22-year relationship with my ex-wife, and then have basically been dating for the last 6 years. And I'm trying to feel more comfortable and happy and fulfilled, independent or regardless of my relationship status. And so, whereas for the majority of my life, having like being married, being a family man, having a house with my wife and kids was like a huge part of my ego and persona, and it like my self-worth was completely wrapped up in it, right? So yeah, these things are interesting as they shift over time.
So it's interesting that we're talking about this. So what are you doing now? I guess we might as well.
Let's fast forward.
Relationships. It says no BS relationships down there. I don't know if that's just you're just saying that, or that's your brand, right?
Here's what I'm doing. My brand is curiouser.life. The idea that being curiouser about your life and what your options are leads to better relationships, better life, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In 2025, I'm working specifically on a project, No Regrets, which is going to be focusing in on how to build solid relationships, the life that you want to live, right? Because we all have like these beliefs in our heads that we're supposed to do this or we have to do that in order to have a relationship. And we do these things that we're supposed to do, and Lord, do we regret them. Right? Like it's awful. And I see people caught in these patterns, and a lot of the patterns, again, which is why I like talking about like the pickup artist community and the seduction community, is a lot of the patterns have trickled or seeped out of that community into what people consider common wisdom. And it's very...
Oh yeah, when you have these guys that are like reading this stuff and watching these videos, reading these books and going to these programs in their early 20s where they're basically still teenagers.
Yes.
And they're developing beliefs, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that could be dangerous. That could
and
really
now they're my age.
Right? Yeah, and then they'll never be fulfilled because
putting their trick coin into the dispenser to get back sex is not working. They're bitter and upset because they've been taught that relationships are transactional, that they have to look like a Chad, or they have to peacock, or they have to, be the alpha, or they have to nag, or and they believe all of this stuff.
And by the way, so all those terms, Tellman, did you recognize all of those terms?
I have read the game. I have read the game.
Okay.
So I got the
no,
terms,
because you didn't recognize incel, but pop culture, I hear of it. I'm in the stand-up comedy.
I got all
community,
those
so
terms.
I hear incel all the time. Joe Rogan talks about it and his group, and I don't listen to Joe Rogan, but I listen to some. I listen to the guy that got in trouble with the Puerto Rico comment on Trump, like with the Trump thing, but he's in the Joe Rogan family. Anyway, my point being, I've heard all those terms, right? And that's your point, is it's part of the lexicon now. And I've never read the game. I've never read any of the pickup artist stuff, but I know what all of it means now.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of people who have been sold on, if you do these things, if you look this way, if you act this way, you will get whatever. And then on the other side, we've got femmes or women who have been told over and over and over again, you need to be submissive, you need to be nice, you need to be supportive, you need to show him what love really is in order to make him the man who can like soften towards you. And it's this gigantic war of the sexes that's just so full of bullshit and lies and masturbatory fantasies,
extreme manipulative tactics.
Gaslighting, scunnery, manipulation, the whole 9 yards.
That's brutal.
But there is differences in how men and women approach relationships.
Ish, right? Because if you take all of the men and all of the women, this most extreme man and this most extreme man are going to be more different than this most extreme man and this woman, right? Because we are all humans, we're all unique. And that's the key, because we can't say you, Tellman, or you, Harris, are going to be exactly this way just because you're both men.
But there's also the extremes, but then there's the male versus female tendency toward how they express the same bullshit, right? It's like,
some of that is because
the same pattern underneath,
Some of that is caked onto us from decades of society as well, right? Like,
sure. A lot of socialization. But again, is that who you are, or is that your bullshit? Right. And that's the thing, because a lot of people will be like, oh, I'm a man, I do things this way. I'm a woman, I do things this way. And then it turns out that it's just bullshit, right? They don't want to do things that way. They just don't know that they can't do that. They can do them another way because nobody ever told them or showed them.
Right.
Like, it's crazy. And, going to the Nookie thing, because I think this is important. Another thing I've done for the past over a decade is I've taught kink and non-monogamy around the world, right? And when you think about and I'm not as extreme as a lot of people, I will be the first to tell you that. But when you think about there are people out there who are in what they consider, owner and property relationships.
Yeah.
And they are happy and living their dream and having the wild, kinky, whatever it is that they want. And then you've got, some person who's just like, why can't I find a, fill in the blank here, girlfriend, boyfriend, date mate, whatever. You realize they can, but they're probably, and I love that idea of, just being too encrusted in bullshit to make the moves they need to make to find that life for themselves, whether it is monogamous or non-monogamous, whether it is long-term relationshiping or dating for fun and passion. It doesn't matter, but you gotta know, right? What's the bullshit and what do you actually need and want out of your life?
Right.
Yeah. So I'm gonna guess I'm actually okay with non-monogamy. I even tried it a little bit with my wife. Unfortunately, she was already doing it, but we had different ideas of what it would be. But I've talked to a lot of people that are not okay with it. I'm very much into the like non-ownership aspect of it, basically.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
don't own your body, and like and yet that is what most marriages think that they signed up for. Like because when I talk to people about the idea of, you know, non-monogamy, it's totally foreign. Like their brains can't handle it. Like, what do you mean? Like, no, how can you be okay with that? And I'm like,
Right.
well,
Well,
I don't own her. I you know, like it's fine. You
right.
know.
Yeah.
I live in an area that is exceptionally liberal. So I have many poly friends, and I had a girlfriend that was very into the idea of moving in that direction with our relationship, and I was not into it. That's one of the main reasons we broke up. But I have a bunch of friends who are into the ethical non-monogamy poly kind of thing, and so I've had lots of very interesting conversations with individuals and couples about the perspective around this. And so it's very interesting how it's at least in modern Western culture, how that aspect of relationships is shifting, and or people's ability and willingness to talk about it has shifted.
Yeah, massively.
That's huge. And to me, that's a big part of when I talk about BS, I talk about the idea of two become one, right? Versus two people opting into a relationship where they are still autonomous human beings,
right,
making the choice to be together over and over and over again. Now, whether you're monogamous or non-monogamous, you can learn from that, right? That's it. It doesn't even matter. It's all about, are you as an individual, as a grown-ass adult, allowed by yourself, because society already has told you what you're allowed to do, right? But are you allowed by yourself to continue growing, to continue exploring the world? And if you have a partner where you both agree to be monogamous, great. If you have a partner where you are upfront and I am non-monogamous, and they are like, okay, I still want to be a part of your life, great. I don't care one way or another. What I care about is that people that I work with have relationships with zero BS and no regrets, whether they last for, 15 days or 15 years or, hey, with science, maybe 15 centuries. I mean, how am I supposed to know, right? That's the key. And it affects everything. I mean, think about like how you felt trying to get your business done when you're going through a divorce.
Right. No,
like,
brutal. Yeah. Very ineffective.
It affects your, psychology. It affects everything.
Right,
and that's the part that I like. I've been through it, like been there, survived that, got the fucking t-shirt. Like survival isn't enough. Thrival is the key.
Cool.
By the way, you use the word survival a couple of times. I'm just curious, what did previvor of cancer mean? What was that in the intro?
So my mother passed away of breast cancer. Okay. And when I was 49, a few years back, I got genetic tested for the markers for breast cancer. And I had the nastiest genetics of all of the genetics for breast cancer. And also for my plumbing, right? So I made the decision without really much hesitation to get a full hysterectomy, remove all that plumbing, and to have a double mastectomy and reconstruction. I had 4 major surgeries in 9 months to reduce my chances. From 87% lifetime chance down to below 20%, which is lower than the national average.
It's interesting, that woman that I mentioned from Tinder, she wanted to get a hysterectomy, and in Panama, she's from Panama, and they wouldn't give it to her. And it wasn't for the same reason, but she has good reason for. I mean, that's a big.
It's hard to get without a serious medical reason, because we're still and I could go on to a whole rant about our medical system and how it treats women or femme presenting people different than it treats the default of men. And I found that out when I did get that hysterectomy and I was put into medical menopause, and they were completely not forthcoming about what would happen to my body, how it would happen, and more importantly, how they would not help.
I just heard a podcast on the Daily about that breast reduction surgery is on the rise, and they and even if it's the insurance won't cover it because they say it's voluntary, but cosmetic, but for a lot of women it's not. It's like like there's back pain. I know my mother has big boobs and has complained about, I mean, she's never got a breast reduction, but I had some friends that have because of that. And yep. Yeah, we're definitely not a equal society with a lot of things.
And and the thing is, to bring this back to like relationships and stuff, we're not equal in everything, right? Men, women, whether it's, whatever gender you're interested in and whatever, we're never ever going to get into a relationship where we are equal. Somebody's going to have an advantage in some areas, somebody's going to have an advantage in other areas, yada, yada, yada. The key is knowing that everybody has their own challenges, right? And to figure out, are we going to collaborate on building the best possible life for both of us as individuals and then together in couplehood? Or are we going to fight and battle for control and try to change the other person to meet what we think we should have in a relationship? And that's a key focus shift. Is not like, oh, well, you're a man, so therefore everything else in the world is easier for you. And, oh, well, you're a woman and, on Tinder, you can get 400 matches in one day if you want to. Like, it's not about that. Like, if that's how you want to play out your relationships, you're going to be miserable the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Does the hysterectomy affect pleasure?
It could have. Absolutely. Yeah. Especially because I didn't just get a hysterectomy. I also had my ovaries and fallopian tubes removed, which removes all of my natural methods of creating some of the sex hormones, right? And that's the part where they were not as forthcoming telling me how they would or would not, in most cases, replace those. So that was something I had to dig into. I went from being a happy, healthy, like super functional 49-year-old to 6 months later, ashy skin, my hair was shattering. Like, I had no drive, no desire. Like, I felt depressed. Like, it was like stepping from Oz into Kansas. And I ended up having to go outside the traditional medical system because I talked with 5 different people about this in the traditional medical system. And every single one of them, men and women, told me, well, we can do this little bit here, but we can't really help you. You're going to have to learn to live with it, or some variation of it's all in your head.
Right.
Until I found a company that would prescribe for me that I had to pay for out of pocket, still have to pay for out of pocket and will for the rest of my life, that allowed me to say, this is what I'm experiencing, and they treat it. And it was so simple when it actually happened, but the traditional medical system will not.
Is it just hormone replacement therapy?
Yeah. But so what they were willing to do, to get a little bit more technical, they were willing to give me estrogen patches. In fact, I was on 3 at a time. But they were not willing to give me progesterone because that's only for people who are going to get pregnant. And they didn't want to give me testosterone regularly either because, they just don't know enough about it. Whereas now I'm on a balance of all 3. And, I'm 51 years old and living my life. Yeah,
I did testosterone replacement for a while, and I definitely noticed a difference.
It's huge sometimes.
Yeah, I have a comedian friend that's like, you know what? Guys don't need testosterone. We need less testosterone. Like, that's the problem.
You need a balance. That's
Yeah.
the key, right? Like, because they had me on high levels of estrogen, but without the other two balancing it out, it's still out of whack. And the thing that I learned, hormones run just about everything. Weight loss, joint pain, brain, how you focus, like so many different things are affected by your hormones, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, huge. It's a huge like soapbox that I step up on every once in a while.
You know that? Do you know the old? How do you know how do you know how to make a hormone?
I've heard several versions.
Don't pay her. That's an old like 1950s Checky Green or something like that. Yeah. My dad probably told that one. I had another bad joke too, but it wasn't a joke. When you're talking about sewing, my family would always say, someone would say "so," and then or "so what," and then they would say "buttons on pants," like, and I'm like, what a pattern interrupt. Like it's actually good to stop the stupid conversation.
Right.
But anyway, you said curiouser.life, but we're putting curiouser.me on.
We are.
That's correct.
Yeah, it'll redirect to curiouser.life.
Okay, cool.
But tell us about what people are going to get when they go there. Like what's going on?
First of all, a great animated GIF is on the top of it. I can tell you that right now. I love it. It's hilarious. No regrets.
No regrets.
Awesome.
Yeah. So this is just a way to get in touch with me and have a quick one-on-one tete-a-tete about where you are with your romantic life and your relationships, and to discover if we can work together. Like, do I like you? Do you like me? Can I solve one problem for you in the time that we speak, right? Like, can we solve or give you a solution to one thing that going forward is going to make your life better, your love life, your daily life, whatever it is. And if we like each other, then
it looks like more overall help with life than just relationships. I don't see a lot about relationships on the page.
I feel like our relationships are central to our identity, right? And when I say relationships, of course, mostly I'm talking about, that significant other. But if you think about, how do we relate to our friends? How do we relate to everybody? Yeah, it's huge, right? And that's really what it's all about.
Cool.
Cool.
Go ahead, Tellman.
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say this has been great. What are you thinking about or working toward in the future? What's next for you?
I really want, I love doing one-on-one. That's my bread and butter. It's so much fun. I would
like
love
monogamy when it comes to business.
I would love business to start monogamy. Doing what I did with my sewing. Like chunks, people can opt in and, at the places that they want to. But it's different than it was way back in, the 90s and the 2000s. And so that's what I'm learning now is, how do I, crack the code for reaching a large number of people and making things a little less, one-on-one, a little less, intensive.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's where I'm at. That's my challenge right now. That's one of the things that just this year I started really, engaging more with Colin, because I've known him for since 2013 at a Warrior event.
Mm-hmm.
And
did Tellman mention to you that I work for Warrior Plus now?
I saw that actually on the other show. Yeah. So, and that's the type of thing, when we're talking about Colin has started putting out, these tiny little books for, just solving a very quick thing or whatever. That's the type of thing that I think I'd really like to be doing a little bit more of, and then finding a way to get those into the hands of people. I've got a book right now, Start With No Dating, which is a very simple, 1 hour audio. It's very easy. And it's just, how do I get that into the hands of enough people, right, to make that really start gaining momentum.
So who's your ideal customer exactly? Who's your ideal client?
My ideal client is somebody who is 35 to 55. I don't really care about gender. Gender doesn't matter to me. Who is frustrated at how they have put so much into relationships and they've tried so hard to get it right. And they feel like they have failed. They feel like they are missing something. They might be like I was, well, like I am actually, neurodiverse or neurospicy, as I like to call it, right? And they can't quite figure out how like normal people seem to make this happen.
Okay, so couple things. So number one, in the dating relationship space, who have you had more paying male or female clients and customers?
So fun fact, men are the ones who do the one-on-one coaching with me most often.
Yep.
And women and non-men, non-binaries, you know, that sort of thing, are the ones who usually buy my books.
Yeah.
Well, how do the men find you if they didn't buy your book?
Teaching. Right. Or they've been to one of my webinars, or they know me from, you know, the alternative lifestyle.
So if you had to choose men, women, let's just simplify it for the argument's sake. I understand that it's not a binary choice, but if you had to choose men or women and stand on that mountain for your customers, which would you choose?
Ooh,
I have a
see,
question,
that's tough.
real quick.
Hold on. I have like 5 more questions. There's like this is just the beginning.
Yeah, that's really tough for me though, because for me, gender is the least important.
It's not about you. It's about them. And how are and who are they or aren't they going to be attracted to you, your message, and your marketing? Because the gender that you choose to attract is your expression and your way of expressing yourself in your marketing and your message will be radically different for men versus women versus non-binary or non-conforming, right? Or somewhere in between, like radically different language. You'll use different verbs, different adverbs, different slang terms. You'll wear different clothes. You'll show up on different podcasts. You'll have different ads, like all different, totally different marketing.
See, that's where I'm going to get stuck then. Like, let's say for the sake of this conversation.
But here's the thing. That doesn't mean you can't have multiple paths in.
Right.
But you do need to choose one first.
If I need to choose one first for the sake of this conversation.
That's all it is.
Then I'll go with men.
Great. So for argument's sake.
Right. That's your foundation. And especially for this conversation, but like that, just like a non-monogamous relationship, you know, there's some foundation there, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Well, but there's one other interesting thing that you have that's not just that could actually be more important than the male versus female, which is what about creating a community? I immediately go to school because I've been thinking about school a lot and learning a lot about school, but creating a community for neurodivergent dating.
So interestingly enough, Briar Harvey and I created a 10-part series called the Neurospicy Guide to Dating that we recently finished. And she's working on getting all of, you know, the replays together and transcripts and everything like that. And absolutely, I mean, that's definitely something that is a part of, you know, what I'm passionate about.
That's cool. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like what the focus needs to be creating a community of people that you want to teach first, and then you know, and you're saying build the audience and be able to reach more people, right?
Mm-hmm,
and
yeah,
like that would do the trick. I think that I feel like the neurodivergent thing is totally like on the rise in terms of awareness. Like it's trending. It has been for the last several years, and people are becoming more aware or suspicious that they may be neurodivergent. And this is what makes me different than everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And creating a community to teach people that think about and perceive the world a certain way how to have better romantic relationships, I think would be rare and exceptionally valuable. Yeah.
I do like that. Yeah, absolutely.
And also, it becomes more important than the gender issue. Generally speaking, like deciding your gender on marketing is super important. But I think the neurodivergence is a hot enough button that you might be able to just you might be able to bypass it.
Yeah, that would be the ideal for me, because I'm really like, there's so much variation in gender, and how, from one man to another, how radically different they are from each other. But more like, these women or these non-binaries, or like the gender spectrum is something I'm pretty passionate about, having been in the alternative lifestyle community for as long as I am, right? Like taking the gender more out of it and looking at what are the behaviors, what are the results? Like that's the key, right?
Yeah, but still, when you're writing a letter to an alpha male, it's a totally different letter than when you're writing to someone who's like gender.
I'm not going to write to an alpha male.
I was just going to say, I don't think she's writing to an alpha male.
It's the nature of the nature of the sales letter, the nature of the video, the nature of the YouTube video, depending on who you're trying to attract, is going to be radically different.
Wait, what type of male would you be writing to if not an alpha male?
I would be writing to the male who understands that alpha male comes from faulty research on wolves in captivity and wants more than to.
Well, I can be aware, but not like knowing that alpha male is based on some pretext.
Right, but that's the thing. It's alpha male bros, right? It's definitely a thing. Those are the people who found themselves climbing to the top of the pickup artist community, and they're also the ones who are now bitter and upset because
these are aging alpha male bros, right? Like single aging bros.
So, but what couple of words could you use to describe that person rather than rather than the guy that doesn't believe in alpha, but what does he? Who is he?
What's the label? What's the box you're going to put him in? But that's really what I'm at.
That's a good question. Like successful.
This is trying to get the
everything
customer
except
avatar.
Relationships, right? Like somebody who has found professional success, who is probably fairly happy with who they are as an individual, confident in themselves, except when it comes to relationships. They haven't found that key. They're still looking for that bit, right? Because if somebody comes to me and they are, really, really like hopelessly lost in every aspect of life, I'm not going to be able to help them. They probably need therapy.
Yeah. So like, would you say though that those? So those are we're still talking about males.
Yeah.
Would you say that those people are not in extremes, right? They're not alpha male. They're not broken, right? So what percentage of males do you think fall into that category?
In the 35 to 55 range, I would probably say the core 30%, right?
Yeah. And then what percentage of women, because I'm just going to go back to that for you, what percentage of women fall into that same category?
I'd say it's probably about the same.
It's interesting to me though that they're attracted to low-end book though, that you found that females are attracted to low-end book. Why are they not the professional self-independent woman?
Yeah. One of the things I have found, though, is that whether it's socialization or whether it's how our brains are wired, is I have found that a lot of femme-oriented people, whether they are born femme or became femme, are very verbal. And reading is a go-to. Like they go to reading about things fairly quickly. So they start there and then they learn from reading more effectively. Mm-hmm. Whereas a lot of men and women in the upper ranges, especially those who are going through the change, verbally and connecting one-on-one, Plus, if for those people who are, really doing well in their professional life, especially men, a lot of them have had the experience of coaching, right? They have been coached to get from one place to another. Whereas a lot of women have not been given the opportunity to coach, no matter how successful they are, to be coached. And so it's often a more foreign thing. Now, online, that's starting to shift a lot. A lot of women are like, but it's still, they're picking up, I ought to be able to spend this $20 and fix my entire life. Right? Whereas men are like, I don't want to spend the $20. I don't want to do like all that bullshit reading and stuff. I want to.
Yeah, I'll give you $1,000 and tell me how to do it.
I want to spend 5 or 10 grand and spend the next 90 days working my ass off to fix this problem instead of I want to like work on it. Like men don't generally go to therapy either, but women do. Women are more attracted to personal development, but men are more attracted to like systems and structures and spending a bunch of money on a specific outcome and not really caring about the journey as much. And so like, but that's really important in your business to be deciding who you want to have as your long-term customers.
Right. And that's why the neurospiciness, really like fits well with my thought process, is because women who tend to be neurospicy are not
what do you mean by neurospicy? What is your definition?
Neurodiverse, right?
Okay, so it's a synonym.
And men who are neurospicy are not the same as other men. I like to say, are you the right person? Because when I had my issues after my marriage, and we even tried marriage counseling, all these things, and I tried all these relationship things, and none of them worked for me.
Right.
Because I wasn't the right person for the stuff that works for, 70%.
So I have a question for you, though. This is really important. I found this with my attention deficit disorder business, and it was a very, very painful lesson that I had to learn several times before it sunk in, which is my experience. So my experience, I had a business for several years that was specifically focused on people with attention deficit disorder, and I used hypnosis and neuro-linguistic programming techniques to turn their worst ADHD symptoms into their greatest strengths and superpowers by learning how to focus them and use them on purpose instead of them just controlling and ruining their lives, right? And what I found is I like the same teams of people were writing the copy, the funnels were the same as the other markets I was in, all these things, but the refunds were 3 times all of my other businesses. And
including internet marketing.
It was absurd. All the customers would take all the upsells. So it was just like money was coming in and refunds were going out while they were asking for refunds and processing chargebacks on the same thing because people bought it, didn't remember buying it, definitely never downloaded it and consumed it, and then got pissed off when they saw it on their card and did a chargeback at 2 a.m. in the morning. And often, because of the way it was all going, sometimes we'd end up doing chargebacks and refunds on these. I had to shut down the whole business because of this tendency to make spontaneous, stupid decisions and then get pissed off about it later and forget the details.
That's so funny. I'm going to help you with your impulse buying.
And if you translate that to relationships.
Oh, yeah, right. But here's the thing. Here's the thing that I'm just throwing out there is that, and this might be a challenging one, is are neurospicy people good long-term customers and clients?
I would say so far in my experience, yes.
Awesome. If that's the case, then you've great. That's super good. But just keep an eye on that. If you're going to focus on
it would. I guess it would. I would imagine that it might change with growth.
Also, what happens when you put like 100, neurospicy people into a training together, and like, are they like they're all looking at the world very differently? Are they all going to be super difficult to deal with and corral? Because in a group environment, that's very difficult if you have a whole bunch of mismatchers and who are looking at the world from a completely like unique perspective, right? So those are some things that, that might be interesting. It's
really, so one of the things that I found useful when talking about like how we engage in relationships
Yeah.
is, are you fuckable or bangable, which is, can you get laid, right? Are you likable? Do you make friends easily? And do they like you even when they don't bang you, which is why I put fuckable first, right? Are you lovable? Do people want to create deeper, intimate relationships with you? And then specifically for the ADHD and a couple of other neurospicy people, are you sustainable? Right? Because ADHD people are super likable, super lovable, super bangable, but when it comes to sustaining,
yeah, very, very
right?
spiky, right?
But when we look at those 4 boxes, that's when we start seeing where people, regardless of their neurospiciness, end up having their biggest challenges, right? We can target in, oh, I've always been able to make friends and
Right.
keep friends, but I'm not so good at creating sexy times intimate situations,
Sure.
right? Or I'm really good at long-term friendship and love, but I lose my passion, right? Or I'm really good at like having sex with the same person for decades, but I'm not so good. They don't like me very much. In fact, they kind of hate me, and it's a spite bang on a regular basis, right? Like these are the types of things. So when we look at that and we say, I don't care what your diagnosis is, I care about the behavior and the data and what actually works for you. Again, I think about things differently, which is possibly why, like, I'm looking at this thinking, how am I going to market this? Because it's really do what works, right? It's not about, like, I can say men tend to do this and women tend to do that, which is overall true by the data. But then if you have one woman and 3 NBs who don't do that, it's not about men, right? It's about, this is the behavior that you have fallen into. And how do you not do that anymore?
Mhm.
Or how do you do it better or with the right people? Because that also matters.
Cool.
Geeky.
Well, awesome. Well, everybody, if you are into what Heather has to say and you want to improve your relationships, go to curiouser.me/no regrets. And when they go there, what's going to happen?
There'll be a fun page just sort of talking through what kind of person I'm looking for and what you're hoping to achieve. And then there's just a form that you fill out. I'll get in touch with you and we'll put together, I'll ask you some questions based on, what you have to say. And we'll put together a time to get together and see if we're a good fit.
Cool. Rock and roll. Well, Heather, is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up for the day?
Win or fail spectacularly.
That's right. I like that. Cool. Awesome.
I want to know, am I bangable?
I would have to spend more time with you to know that. But see, the thing is,
fair enough.
That's a good question. The thing is, only you can decide if you're bangable enough.
Yeah.
Are you getting laid enough? If the answer is yes, you're bangable, right? If you're not getting laid enough, it doesn't matter what I think.
Right.
It matters how you are experiencing it.
Right. So Tellman has a couple closing questions for you.
Yeah. Harris, you can always go to this website right here and schedule a free consultation if you want to improve your bangableness.
Okay.
Yeah. So Heather, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much did you enjoy your time today on the Tellman and Fellman Show?
Oh, this is super fun. I love getting geeky with people.
Awesome. And if you could only nominate one person to be the next special guest on the Tellman and Fellman Show, who would you nominate?
So I think woman number 3.
I like that.
Is somebody who I recently came across, Christine Morel. She does funny ads.
Oh, I think I've seen some of her ads, but I don't know her.
Yeah.
I think I know her.
She's been teaching funny ads. I've taken a couple of her workshops. It's brilliant.
Are you are you friends with her? Are you in touch with her or no?
I mean, not super friends, right? Because I've just taken a couple of her workshops, but I do have her on Messenger, and
great.
So okay. Yeah, I could definitely reach out and
see where that goes. I mean, maybe you can introduce us if you feel like you know her well enough to do that. Otherwise, we'll reach out to her separately. But yeah, well, we can talk about that offline and see what's what.
Sure.
Cool.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. This was a very divergent conversation compared to the ones that we normally have. And I certainly enjoyed it and had a good time. I hope Tellman did as well.
No, I did. I'm telling you, if you start neurodivergent dating as a school group, it's going to blow up. Like I'm telling you, that would be a really smart move. People are going to love it.
I do like that. I've already got the foundation for it. So, that absolutely might be kind of like the thing.
It could be a great free group.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you for being here. This was a great episode. Thank you to all of our viewers and for watching episode 66 of the Tellman and Fellman Show. And we will see you all next week.
6'6" is a fine position. It's a fine position. You should not be only in the 69. 69 is not really a great position, if I'm honest. I'm not in love with it.
I mean, I'm actually with you. It's just, with a nickname like Nookie, I kind of, like.
Yeah. I got you. I mean, but I especially don't like I don't like the position of my face. It's just
it's distracting.
Yeah, it is. Anyway, well, thanks so much for being on the show. It's great meeting you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend.
Please put a good word in for your grandpa, Santa, and let him know that I was a good boy this year.
That's right.